The air of Manila was heavy that night, the kind that carried both the scent of roasted street food and the lingering fumes of jeepneys coughing smoke into the humid evening. Beneath the flickering yellow light of an old lamppost, a boy of barely 12 years sat on an overturned plastic crate, hugging a battered guitar as if it were his only friend. His name was Mateo Cruz, though everyone in the neighborhood simply called him Matty. Matty's fingers were thin, the bones of his knuckles prominent from years of malnourishment. Yet when they touched the strings of the guitar, they transformed, gliding, plucking, strumming with a precision far beyond his age. The guitar itself was hardly a treasure, it had only 4 working strings, its wooden body cracked along the side, but Matty treated it as though it were made of gold. Children gathered around him, wide-eyed, some barefoot, some clutching their younger siblings. Vendors nearby paused their sales of skewered meats and fish balls, the hiss of oil momentarily forgotten, just to listen. Matty closed his eyes, let his voice rise, and sang with a soul that seemed too large for his small, fragile frame. His voice was raw, untrained, but pure, like a river flowing through jagged rocks, powerful yet unrefined. And in that voice was something else, pain. Each note carried the weight of nights spent sleeping on cardboard beside his mother, of mornings spent scavenging recyclables with his older brother, of afternoons skipping school to help buy rice. Yet there was also something defiant in his tone, a kind of refusal to be broken, as though music was the only shield between him and despair. Matty's mother, Rosa, stood at a distance, leaning against the chipped wall of their cramped shanty. Her face bore the exhaustion of someone who had carried too many burdens, yet her eyes softened every time she looked at her son. She remembered the day he found that guitar in a junk heap, how his little hands had tugged it out of the pile as if destiny itself had placed it there for him. Since then, no matter how harsh the day had been, Matty always found time to play. That night, as his song reached its end, the small crowd erupted into applause, coins dropping into the plastic cup at his feet. It wasn't much, just a handful of pesos, but to Rosa, it meant tomorrow they could buy more than rice, maybe even a small piece of chicken to share. Yet Matty didn't play for coins. He played for something unseen, something far beyond the streets of Manila. He played for the dream that someday, somehow, someone important would hear him. The chance came in the most unexpected way. A foreign tourist, tall, blonde, and curious, had stopped at the edge of the crowd. His phone was out, recording. He didn't understand the Tagalog lyrics, but he understood the emotion. They pierced him, left him stunned. He uploaded the video that very night with the caption, "The most soulful boy I've ever heard," on the streets of Manila. Within days, the video spread like wildfire. Millions of views, shares across social media, reactions from around the world. And then, a message came through to Rosa's borrowed phone, an invitation that seemed too surreal to believe. It was from America's Got Talent. The day the news reached Matty, he was sitting by the narrow riverbank, strumming the same 4 strings. Rosa approached, her voice trembling as she told him, They want you to audition in America." Matty froze, the pick in his hand falling into the dirt. America. The word itself was like magic. To him, it wasn't just a place, it was a universe away, a stage where the greatest stars shone. "Me," he whispered, as if afraid someone else might be standing behind him. "Yes, you, Anik," Rosa said, tears welling in her eyes. "They saw your video. They want you." For a moment, Matty laughed in disbelief. Then his laughter turned to tears. He buried his face into his mother's arms, shaking, not from fear but from the immensity of hope. But hope came with fear, too. They had never even left Manila, let alone traveled to America. Rosa barely had enough money for food. How could they afford plane tickets, passports, visas? Yet, to their astonishment, the show offered to cover the costs. A sponsor stepped in, moved by Matty's story. Within weeks, the boy from the streets found himself holding a passport, his name printed in bold letters, a ticket to the dream. The night before they left, Matty couldn't sleep. He stared at the guitar resting against the wall. A thought gnawed at him. Would 4 broken strings be enough on a stage like that? But then he remembered what his late father used to tell him, "It's not the instrument that matters, Matty. It's the heart behind it." And with that, he closed his eyes and whispered a silent prayer. The day of departure was chaos and wonder. At the airport, Maddie's eyes widened at the vastness of it all. The gleaming floors, the towering planes, the voices announcing flights in English and Tagalog. He clutched his mother's hand, afraid he might get lost in the sea of travelers. The flight itself was another marvel. Maddie had never been higher than the rooftops of Manila, and now he was soaring above the clouds. He pressed his forehead against the small window, watching the world shrink below him. For the first time in his life, the horizon didn't look like an ending. It looked like a beginning. When they landed in Los Angeles, Maddie's heart raced with both awe and terror. Everything felt larger than life, the highways, the skyscrapers, the lights that stretched endlessly. But nothing compared to the sight of the AGT stage when they finally arrived for rehearsals. It was overwhelming, the massive logo, the dazzling lights, the sheer size of the theater. This was no street corner, no small crowd of neighbors. This was America's biggest stage, and somewhere in the audience would sit Simon Cowell, the man known for breaking dreams as easily as he made them. Maddie held his guitar tighter than ever, his palms sweaty. He could almost hear his own heartbeat echoing through the hall. "Are you ready, Anik?" Rosa whispered, brushing his hair from his forehead. Maddie nodded, though his throat was dry. He wasn't sure if he was ready. But he knew one thing, he had come too far not to try. As the stage manager called his name, Maddie took a deep breath. The boy from Manila stepped into the blinding lights, his cracked guitar in hand, his heart pounding, his dream trembling on the edge of becoming real. And somewhere in the shadows, Simon Cowell leaned forward, curious. The air backstage was thick with nerves. Contestants paced back and forth, their costumes rustling, makeup artists giving last-minute touch-ups, stagehands carrying microphones and instruments across the maze of hallways. Amid all the chaos stood Mateo, Maddie, Cruz, clutching his worn-out guitar like a lifeline. He had never seen so many lights, cameras, and people with headsets moving in synchronized chaos. Everyone seemed to know exactly what they were doing, except him. He was just a barefoot boy from Manila, his entire life carried inside the cracked body of an old guitar. Beside him, his mother Rosa knelt down, cupping his face with trembling hands. "Anik, remember, it doesn't matter what happens. Sing with your heart. That's all." Maddie nodded, but his throat was dry. He tried to imagine himself back home, sitting under the streetlight, kids around him, the smell of roasted corn in the air. But the thought quickly dissolved when the stage manager, a tall man with a clipboard, called out, "Mateo Cruz, you're on deck." Walking to the stage. As Maddie walked toward the entrance, his knees shook. He could hear muffled applause from the act before him, the rumble of thousands of voices. Then the stage doors opened, and light poured over him like a tidal wave. The audience was enormous. Balconies stretched upward, filled with faces staring down at him. Cameras on long arms swung overhead. The glowing AGT star logo blazed behind him. And there they were, the judges. Howie Mandel leaned forward with his usual warmth, smiling encouragingly. Heidi Klum adjusted her hair, tilting her head with curiosity. Sofia Vergara beamed at him like a proud aunt seeing her nephew for the first time. But Maddie's eyes locked on the fourth judge, Simon Cowell. Simon sat with arms folded, eyes sharp and unreadable. The man whose approval could change a life, or end a dream in seconds. The introduction. "Hello," Howie said first, his voice booming across the hall. "Welcome to America's Got Talent. What's your name, young man?" Mateo Cruz, Maddie said into the microphone, his accent thick, his voice barely above a whisper. The audience let out a gentle, "Ah." "And how old are you, Mateo?" Heidi asked, leaning forward. 12. "Oh my gosh," Sophia exclaimed. "He's a baby." Simon raised an eyebrow. "And what are you going to do for us today?" Maddie swallowed hard. "I'm going to sing, and play guitar." Simon's gaze drifted down to the old instrument in his hands. The cracks on the side glimmered under the stage lights, the strings clearly mismatched. Simon tilted his head, skeptical. "On that guitar?" Maddie nodded, clutching it tighter. "Yes, sir. It's the only one I have." The crowd murmured. Simon's lips twitched, but he said nothing more.